You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back one final time here for the network for you on demand, folks. Yep, it is time to talk a little bit of volatility. Yes, it is time for Volatility Views. My name, of course, is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which all of you folks have been binging all week. I was traveling earlier this week, but now I'm back in the Chi-Town studio. Still a bit under the weather. So if you hear me crinkling cough drop wrappers in the background, or if you hear fighter jets going overhead, don't worry, they're not coming to blow us up here in Chicago. Just the beginning of the big air and water show. But yeah, still a little under the weather. Hopefully I'll be right as rain by the Monday episode of the OB. Of course, if you don't want your partay to end with vol views today, you want to come back for a little bit of extra fun on options oddities. Only one place to go. theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. As we learn who's joining us on the old program today. First, let's go out actually to the SIBO trading floor, to the VIX and the SPX pit. I can't imagine a more appropriate place to be doing the show from today, where we are joined once again by the once future and present Dr. VIX, Mr. Russell Rhoads. Mr. Rhoads, welcome to Vol Views. How go things on the SIBO trading floor, sir?
Things go well on the SIBO trading floor. I'm just kind of lurking over these guys. I love that they're making them wear their jackets again. I think it's such a formal place now now that they've got the guys wearing their jackets once again. But it's like you said, it's the Friday before air and water show. I just got to drop a personal anecdote. I moved to Chicago on the Friday of air and water show weekend in 1994. Today's my 30th anniversary as a Chicagoan.
Oh, welcome.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, actually, we moved up. My dad drove me up on the Saturday, and we listened to the radio broadcast of the air and water show without being able to see any planes for 5 hours.
That sounds about.
I'm still not sure where the entertainment value was in that one. But that's my
as I'm sure
when I finally got out of Memphis.
But you're right about the jackets. The last time I was down the SIBO floor, you're right. They weren't wearing jackets, and it was missing something. There were guys down there in like concert T-shirts and stuff, and I was like, no, this is not how it's supposed to be. At least make the attempt to have the old school fun. Make it a fun trading jacket. I don't care, crazy colors, but it should be something. So I'm glad to see that they are doing. Maybe they're doing that for our show just to look proper. And also joining us, a man who, even though he's not on video right now, is still wearing his old trading jacket, because why not? He is the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to Vol Views. Where is your old trading jacket, sir?
I don't know. I don't have it, but I think they do put the trading jackets on when they're going to do a TV hit. That is That is
That's
one
exactly
thing.
what, and somebody doing one just left. That's why all of that was going on.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely correct.
I'm going to
But,
pretend it was
yeah.
for us, for our audio show, just for fun. They thought we were doing video, so we made them jump through the hoops as we keep on rolling right on into a little bit of the volatility review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol Review, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there and what was going on this week as well from a vol trading and trending and analysis unusual activity perspective. And, we went into the weekend, a little bit skittish, a little bit spooked. It did seem like last week on the show, bad news was bad news again. We hadn't seen that for quite some time. This market had really, for the better part of the last 4 years, shrugged off most of the bad news that had assailed it and just continued to climb higher on the backs of, these days at least, rate cuts or the prospect of rate cuts, and of course the ever-growing boon that is AI to solve all the market's problems. And then last week it seemed like it just all came to a head where all of a sudden bad news was bad again. Recession was trending on Twitter. Everyone was worried maybe the Fed had screwed the pooch on the soft landing. We saw worse news coming out of Japan over the weekend. Kicked off the unwinding of that Japanese carry trade that's been funding a lot of the action over here in the U.S. for a while. So we hit the ground running on Monday, listeners, with really just an impressive spike in vol that wasn't really commensurate to what we saw going on in the broad market. The first thing I saw, I was traveling, of course, on Monday. The first thing I saw when I fired up my screens in the morning was the VIX print. And I thought, oh my God, we must be at limit down. The circuit breakers must have triggered. What madness is afoot? And then I pulled up the major indexes and I saw, oh no, we're down, but it's not, light your hair on fire, jump out the window kind of level. So it was certainly interesting, kind of spoke to the fact that it seemed like something was being unwound out there in the broad market. VIX cash skyrocketing up to a 60 handle. Haven't seen that in quite some time, up to about a 65 before calmer, cooler, saner heads prevailing out there. As we're speaking on the show right now, VIX cash still lofty, but back down from those stratospheric hikes. 21.5 right now, down 7 points from where it was this time a week ago. We were threatening a 30 handle on the show this time a week ago as well, listeners. VVIX, after just skyrocketing into insane town, threatening 200, back to a comparatively reasonable 125. Now, 125 back in the normal days, the before pandemic times, VVIX used to have a pretty predictable range, and 75 was usually the lower end of it, and then it would typically bounce. And 125 was typically, for most scenarios, getting to the upper end of it. Sometimes things would get a little crazy, and maybe you could spiral up to maybe a 150 in some crazy extreme moments. But really, 125, once you started getting up in that end of the territory, you started to get a little top-heavy in VVIX. So even though we are back down 30 handles from where we were a week ago in VVIX, we are still in some fairly frothy territory. So doesn't mean the worst is behind us by a long shot. There's still a lot of froth out there in the markets. Let's go around the horn. Let's go the opposite. Well, actually, let's go the way we started. Let's go back out to Mr. Dr. VIX, because I haven't had a chance to really talk to him about this of late. Obviously, we saw some historic activity out here this weekend coming into Monday and the crazy prints we saw in VIX land as a result. Walk us through that. I'm sure our listeners are pretty interested in this. First off, what were your thoughts as we saw all this playing out over the weekend and we knew we were heading for a pretty crazy open on Monday? And then B, what were your thoughts when all of the madness was playing out on Monday? And then, of course, fast forward to today as we are coming back off the ledge, sir.
It's interesting to see the high of 65 plus, and start to do some digging around that, and just note that VIX moved from 50 to 60 between 8 and 8:30. When everybody's starting to reset their quotes and everything else. So I Often I will say that we need to put a little asterisk next to something that happens with VIX. Often it's when we're going into a holiday weekend, how fixated I am on the calendar stuff, et cetera. I wonder a bit if the lack of liquidity at the time that VIX made that high contributed to that, and if the exact same market activity occurred 15 years ago, would the high have been in the mid 60s, or would it be something like the upper 30s to 40? And I feel like the upper 30s to 40 is a bit more appropriate than where we ended up. Just based on that overnight VIX, I'm very suspect with spot VIX and the quote overnight, and part of the reason that it gets a bump to the upside with the overnight quotes is when you spread out your market on the SPX options, you can only go as low as a nickel for it to be included on the downside. But if I quoted an out of the money VIX, SPX call or put at a nickel by $5, well, the midpoint on that option is going to be the price that goes into the VIX. So again, I'm suspect as to whether or not I really believe that high number.
That's really what I wanted to get at. That's why I wanted to start there, because I know a lot of people are bandying this number about 65, historic levels, all these things. But you're right. It's a VIX cash A, so it's not a tradable thing. Nothing you could have traded printed to 65 in VIX land. B, you're right. It occurred right before the open, really. So, again, not a thing you could really trade. I believe, what was the intraday high on the futures? Somewhere around 37? How high did it get, Mr. Rhoads? Do you know?
37.80 pops into my mind.
Okay, yeah.
And that is totally, just when you said it, that's the number that I visualized. I don't know if that's right or not.
So we're talking about actual tradable products, listeners. Nowhere near a 65, obviously, almost 30 handles below that. So just something to bear in mind. I kind of wanted to throw a little cold water on that right out of the gate. Okay, VIX was 65, so if you were buying the 20 calls, and we've said this a million times, I know most of our listeners get it, you're not trading the VIX cash, but if you're buying the 20 calls, there were not 45 handles in the money, so just dispense of that notion out of the gate right now. But something to remind you of, some of these esoteric, shall we say, calculations that exist out here in the vol space. A lot of the devil is in the details with those, as we just said. If you have a crazy wide, fast market, and guess what they had on Monday, crazy wide, fast markets. If you're throwing crazy wide markets out there, the midpoint's going to get chucked in there. So all of a sudden, wham, bam, it becomes a 65 when in reality, nothing. I mean, things got high. Obviously, a 30-plus print on the VIX futures in the front portion of the curve is nothing to sneeze at, but just maybe dispense with that 65. Any other takeaways you got that are resonating to you, Mr. Rhoads, or certainly as we're coming into the tail end of the week, as vol is coming in, sir?
Well, and we're speaking VIX, but something that really caught my eye first thing this morning is the short end of the VSTOXX curve is flat, basically. It's slightly inverted, but the spot's at 2040, and the August and September futures are 50 cents and 80 cents lower, or I'm sorry, 70 cents lower. So it's very flat on that end of the curve compared to what you're seeing on the VIX term structure, with a little bit more backwardation going on there, with the spot about 40 cents above the August, and spot about 70-80 cents higher than the September. Market's changing on me. So the VSTOXX is lower than VIX, the VSTOXX futures are lower than VIX futures, and both of them are in slight backwardation. I'm going to correct myself on that one.
Oh, watch out. Remember what we said it on the last show. Once you started getting
my gosh, I just can't handle it.
And contango, the daggers come out. Mr. Meatball, same question for you. Obviously, a very tumultuous start to the week out here. We talked a little bit about it on the option block this week, but obviously new listeners to this show as well. So same question for Russell. Walk our listeners through what were you thinking as you saw this Japanese debacle unfold over the weekend. You knew we were heading for a crazy print on Monday, and then the subsequent action we saw unfold, sir.
I mean, it's not like this came out of nowhere. A lot of people are like, oh, I mean, we started to move. Really, this whole thing started while we were in Chicago on the 24th. And, you saw Thursday was bad. Friday was worse. So, we set up for, we were set up for a bad Monday, and then this Japanese stuff hit. Thankfully, I did not shut down I'm lazy, and so I left my Thinkorswim open over the weekend, so it was still working when I went to trade. So I was able to dump all my puts. But yeah, going into the weekend, I picked up a couple of cheapy puts, and I'm with Russell. I don't think the VIX was 65, but vol was pretty crazy. I sold a 4,800 put in the SPX at $60 that morning, and we were nowhere near there, expiring that week. So there was definitely a froth and a demand for options. I mean, things were going there was basically no offer for puts, and this was the first time we'd seen something like that since 2020. And so, yeah, I would say that, 40, 45, 48, something like that seems kind of more reasonable where we were. But the fear was palpable that morning. But what's unique about this event is that it's a vol event without a realized vol event. I mean, yes, the Qs have dropped 10% high to low, but where's the big panic actual sell-off in the market? There wasn't one. It was legitimately Apple and Nvidia, and that's about it. And that's because my understanding is people were and are piled into those stocks as a part of the that yen carry trade. And so yeah, Apple was down 11% on the print. Nvidia was down 10% on that print. But everything else was pretty much, really didn't take it that bad. And so the market itself didn't really have the sell-off that equates to the volatility that we saw in the options, which I thought was really interesting. And I'm not sure that I've seen a vol event like that where the stock market didn't do very much.
Speaking of that yen carry trade, we got some questions in our chat. They want to know if any firms have been identified as having blown out as a result of this. I haven't heard of any. I know, Russell, you're down on the floor. Have you heard any whispers, sir, of who got caught on the wrong end of that?
Are you guys there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought somebody said hello like you couldn't hear me. Formerly Larissa Miller and now Larissa Demiak and I are doing a very quick study on how this yen carry trade fell apart relative to the last couple of times it's happened, how big it might be. There are ways that you can pull data to see because the over-the-counter derivative market is not nearly as opaque as it used to be. Just about everything over the counter is centrally cleared as well. So we're trying to figure out it. We haven't found anybody that's gotten hurt yet, but we're trying to find the circumstances that and the commonalities around when these carry trades have fallen apart in the past. So we're quickly doing that, and I think we're going to do a webcast in about 3 or 4 weeks on it as well.
All right, so stay tuned for that. Listen, I have not heard anything. Mr. Meatball, you have not heard anything, correct, about certain firms getting hit by this?
I have not, but I don't. Probably nobody that you've heard of. My guess is that most of these firms were Asia. Were Asian. Probably, it's kind of the Wild West over there.
Probably a good guess out there. I was going to talk about it later. Let's not bury the lead any longer. Mr. Rhoads, you do deserve a tip of the cap. You have been talking up this UVIX trade for a while now, and lo and behold, you get the mother of all prints on Monday for this trade. It's obviously a short time horizon that UVIX has existed. This has to have been the best data point that you've ever seen for this. Of course, it also happens to come on the weekend where I know you said you scaled back. You were doing 1,000 lots. I was doing 1,000 lots on this one for a while. I did nothing this weekend because I was traveling. I don't like to have lots of on when I was traveling. So I had nothing on. You had a very scaled back position on, but it still works, sir. So congratulations.
Position. I did 500 shares instead of 1,000.
It still works pretty well.
So I'm okay with that. Plus dollar wise, the thing went up so much last week that's kind of equivalent. I think the biggest weekend spike that I had seen, and again, I'm doing numbers off the top of my head, was like 21 or 22%. So that is by far the biggest over the weekend move out of UVIX that we've seen. And in its short, about 27, 28 month life. So that's that is for that market. I feel like the biggest move out of UVXY since they deleveraged was 55% over the same time period. There was there were a couple of volatility events for UVXY that UVIX was not around for, and so the weekend I didn't look at what UVXY did over the weekend, but they probably are kind of in line with each other.
Well, and Russell, how about hats off to the SVIX folks for initiating their hedging program, because that saved their bacon.
It did. Yeah, it totally did.
It really made a huge difference. We've seen a lot of we had seen some criticism on the underperformance, but if they had not been managing and carrying these VIX out of the money calls, that thing would have imploded. Not quite to XIV level, but it probably would have lost another $5-6. So it would have been worse, way worse.
Let's jump to that then as well before we get into the rest of the VIX fund, because obviously SVIX, of course, the inverse product. We've been talking about it for a while, and also talking about the hesitancy some people still had. I know Jim Carroll mentioned that to me when he was on the show recently. I think it was on our Pro Q&A actually when he said it. That as I unravel another lozenge. There we go. All right, keep the throat going, listeners. Yeah, he was scared. A lot of people were still reluctant to sell puts, even with SVIX having the VIX calls for this exact reason. They were concerned that some sort of a spike could happen in VIX and we'd get a repeat of Volmageddon, repeat of the death of XIV. And SVIX did get taken to the woodshed. It came down on Monday to, looks like about 19 even was the low print for SVIX. So again, we were talking, it was threatening 40 not too long ago. So it has been cut more than in half, listeners. But of course, right now, back regaining some of that luster, back to about a 25 even right now. So back to levels we haven't seen in quite some time, but also clearly not as catastrophic. Yeah, we have to go back to Halloween of last year pretty much, where it got to about 22 3/4. That was the last time we were really in this mid to low 20s range. So Mr. Meatball, what were your thoughts on that? And, this their deployment of the VIX calls to come in, as you put it, sir, to save their bacon.
Yeah, I mean, it did, but you got plenty of warning to get out of the way of that thing. The curve went negative for SVIX on the 24th, and really never turned back around. So at no point in time should you have been long that product. If you are trying to capture roll yield, then that is, you've got a pretty good, you held on to it during this whole mess. You got to ask yourself what you're doing.
Yeah, you definitely had some warning signs out there that maybe this was not the time to be buy and holding some SVIX. If you did, maybe some out of the money calls, not something you want to be rocking that underlying. I know, Mr. Meatball, you were looking at some underlying, then you had overwritten some calls. Were you completely out of it as of this week?
Yeah, I just for fun, when it got down to below 20, I scooped a tiny bit of it, but so I'm back in a tiny bit, but I know when I'm going to go a little heavier.
And Mr. Rhoads, same question for you. It's something we've been talking about for a while here on the show, ever since SVIX added these VIX calls. We were talking about maybe it being a drag on performance, and you could argue maybe it was a little bit, but also weeks like this, maybe we're not talking about SVIX anymore if they don't have these VIX calls in their back pocket, sir. So what were your thoughts on how they employed these?
Oh, I think I first off, I'm not sure how much of that was done voluntarily. I part of me thinks maybe I'm again, we all know I have a little bit of a choppy memory still, but I feel like that the SEC may have nudged them a bit just in case to start buying some out of the money calls. But either way, it's a great thing to have done. I didn't check the holdings to see if they changed day over day, to see if they monetized all of that. I'll dig around on that while we talk about some other things. But I've felt a lot more comfortable about owning it, and I've said that on here because I know that they have hedged it for me to a certain point where I'm not going to lose, more than like 50% like I did.
Did you have any SVIX on going into all this madness?
Yeah. No, I did. I mean, the whole idea behind owning UVIX over the weekends is kind of a match pair with my SVIX. I'm always going to own SVIX, and if some of the biggest disasters have come over the weekend for those volatility type products for the short ones, and it's been a benefit to the long ones. That really is the kind of the portfolio context of having those two together. I've got a lot more dollars in SVIX than UVIX, but UVIX has more leverage than SVIX. So at some point, what I probably need to do is break down how I've done with SVIX and UVIX ever since I started consistently buying UVIX into the weekend.
Or Russell, I'll share my UVIX or my SVIX when to get out strategy that I'm running that I'm gonna reveal on Wednesday.
The big reveal. Does this latest action, does it gum up the works at all?
No, we're the way we were tracking. We literally were out. We would have been out on. We would have closed our entire position on. We would have been completely out by the end of the day on the 24th.
So there you go. The big unwind. Yeah.
So we would have been scooping down here. So it's surprisingly simple and I can't wait to talk about it, but I gotta wait.
You've been teasing this for months now. A couple more days, listeners, then we'll get. Well,
you're gonna just follow me on Twitter. I'll put the webinar link out. It's gonna be Wednesday at 8 p.m. So you're gonna want to be there.
There you go. Be there or be square, listeners. As we keep on rolling, let's see what's going on out there in ye old VIX futures. By the way, we mentioned it yesterday on the option block, a banger month for the options industry last month, and also a banger month for VIX futures, up around 25% volume out there. So folks slinging themselves some VIX futures last month. What are they slinging right now? How is that curve looking? Well, as we kicked off the show, the curve was surprise down a little bit. Let's see, 21.35 is where we were when we kicked off the show, and that AUG future puts us down about 1.5 points from where we were this time last week, and the SEP future was at about a 20.80. Puts it down about 1.2 points from where it was on the week. As we mentioned in all the kerfuffle on Monday, we saw that AUG future get up into the 37 range. So obviously quite away from that, but intriguing stuff out there. Looking at this curve right now, listeners, as we were doing the show last week, looks like we had 20 handles pretty much, across the board. Everything was above 20 with the exception of December. This week now we are, pretty much still, I would say it's still the same case. December 1970, so obviously a little seasonality priced in there. Everything else still above the 20 handle, and that October time frame hanging out at about a 22.35 when we kicked off the show. Mr. Meatball, anything catching your eye out there in the VIX futures this week, sir?
Well, we saw the curve obviously really go backward on Monday, and it stayed in backwardation, but is starting to flatten up. I have noticed that the kink in October has gotten bigger over the last few days. I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't pulled back, but that kink continues to be there, and September is about to fall back below November. So that's something I'm keeping my eye on for, a potential play on this market.
Mr. Rhoads, same question to you, sir. Anything catching your eye on the vol surface this week?
Sorry. Just that little hump that we keep talking about. It's ran up and has started to come back a bit. So we've got November at a 78-cent premium to, October at $1.70. I was like, those numbers didn't look right. About $1.70 premium to November. That thing had gotten down to about 25 cents and then widened out to, I think, well over $2. And the same thing is going on in V stocks as well, where I don't know if that widening out has to do with what's going on volatility wise in the world, or if that widening out has to do with a belief as to who's going to be the next president of the United States. So, but really, because all of these things seem to have happened around the same time. So you can't necessarily, and I'm not making a political statement, but this is what's happened recently. Not necessarily going to say it widened out because Kamala's the candidate and looks like she's going to win as of this moment. Just not can't really blame. I don't know if we can blame that one or just it's the higher volatility that pushed the whole curve up. But it is interesting that October moved up so much more than the rest of the curve on a volatility event that really didn't have much to do with the election. At least that's what you would think headline wise.
Let's go look a little bit further afield. Listeners, go out to the land of VIX options. Let's see if they're moving and shaking and rocking and rolling. The answer for this week is, of course, yes. The ADV skyrocketing 1.15 million contracts a day. That is the ADV for VIX options heading into the dog days of summer, listener. That's up 304,000 contracts from this time a week ago. Just to clarify, this is the dog days of summer we're heading into. This is, along with December, mid to late December, the two seasonally most tepid, quiet periods in the volatility market, and we are over 1 million contracts a day. So that's how you know things are going on out there in the market right now. The game is afoot, and today looking pretty active as well. 810,000 contracts on the tape today. We'll get to all the action this week in a second. First, let's break down our top 10 size positions in VIX options. And man, for all you put fans out there who were waiting for that moment, the put revolution, when the puts would take over the charts, take over the top 10. Well, this week is your huckleberry, listeners, because puts are back with a vengeance. Go figure. All it took was VIX cash spiraling to some ridiculous number on Monday. The VIX futures hitting a 37. And all of a sudden, people want to trade some puts again. Go figure how that works out here. So right now, listeners, after hanging out 10-0, 9-1, maybe 8-2 on some crazy weeks, calls over puts for well over a year now on the show. The puts are back, and they are back with a vengeance. 6 puts in our top 10. Only 4 calls to be found, so madness is afoot. Let's go find it, listeners. Number 10 cost you 247,000 contracts. That's a sizable number, listeners, to break into the top 10 in VIX. Goes to show you just how much action is going on out there right now. 250,000 contracts gets you to the SEP 13 puts, the first of many puts in our top 10 this week. Number 9, 254,000 of the SEP 16 puts. Number 8, 278,000 of the August 15 puts. Number 7, 282,000 of the AUG 16 puts. Got to get all the way to number 6 before we find our first call option, 285,000 of the SEP 20s. Those were looking pretty good earlier this week. Hopefully they got the heck out of Dodge on at least some of those. Number 5, 295,000 of the SEP 15 puts. Number 4, 331,000 of our 6th and final put, the September 17 puts. Then the rest is all called. Listeners, 362,000 of the SEP 17s. Number 2, 366,000 of the SEP 25s. And the big dog in VIX land this week, 388,000 of the September 45 calls. You think they would have taken some of those bad boys off the tape, but again, that's part of that 1x5 usually. So in that case, they're probably hoping to skate on those bad boys. But we never skate on the weekly activity when Russell's here, because it is time for Russell's Weekly Rundown.
Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown. Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown.
All right, everybody. Time to unleash the beast that is Mr. Rhoads for 22 minutes of weekly VIX options goodness. Have at it, sir.
Doing that. Doing 22 minutes. I'm doing 3. So figure out how to fill the rest of your time. All right. So we got the Eddie Murphy panicking trade from Monday. Just after the market opened, somebody bought over 800 of the August 7th. Goodness gracious, I didn't write my strike down. But of the August, I want to say they were like the 19 or 20 calls or something like that, and they paid between $21.25 and $15.62 for those. The majority was done at $15.62. This was a short cover. There is no question in my mind that was a short cover, and they panicked right on the open at the very worst time. And if I keep speaking slowly enough, I might actually be able to tell you what the strike price was on those. The strike price on those was, I'm still not finding it. We're never good when we're not in our home office, right? It was the 18 calls they covered. They were short a little under 1,000 of the 18 calls, and they covered 800 of them at prices in the teens to the low 20s. So that's just panicking out of your short trade. If I don't know what the VRO was for this week, the weekly settlement, but they probably would have done better if they just sat on it through that. But somebody that didn't know a whole lot about VIX, in fact, VRO is 22.88. So if they just held the short through expiration, it would have cost them $4.88 instead of an average of somewhere around 17 or 18. So that's a trade I don't like, and that really was a Monday morning panic trade. Not a whole lot going on Tuesday. Wednesday, we had somebody do what I like to refer to as a synthetic covered call using the August 14th options. They bought 200 of the August 14th 23 calls for $3.79, and they sold 200 of the August 14th 23 puts for $1.94. That is like being long at 24.85. And then they finished up the trade. They sold 200 of the 29 calls for $2.04 each. So they've got, they basically do okay as long as VIX remains above 23 or so. They've got a nice trade in place. If we get another one of those VIX spikes, maybe they can do something with the with the 23 strike call they own. So I'm gonna watch it closely to see people trade around it, because the open interest is at a place where I can do that. And then finally, trade I don't like a whole lot. Somebody sold 200 of the August 28th 29 calls for $1.91 each. Spot was at $23.94, but I hope there's something on the other side of that. Typically trades that I don't like, that's me being nice and saying I hope they own 20 futures or something like that.
And they never do. Bam.
Yeah, and they never do. So,
all right, let's see what else. Well,
I do like that synthetic covered call. I hadn't seen it a whole lot lately. One of the reasons I like it is because I can follow the whole trade, because they didn't do the futures. The spread's pretty wide on the weekly futures, so I can see why they did it with options instead of the futures.
There you go, listeners. You like any of those trades? You dislike any of them? Like Russell, hit us up. Let us know as we get out into the rest of the tsunami of activity for this week. Like we said today, 810,000 contracts on the tape already. The big dog, 65,000 of the, easy for me to say, the August 17 puts. Choking on these cough drops here, listeners. August 17 puts for number 1, 65,000 of those bad boys. Number 2, 51,000 of the AUG 45s, so right back to the fun. Number 3, 32,000 of the AUG 25s. That looks like the strikes for our 1x5 friend, obviously not doing it on that ratio today. Number 4, 32,000 of the AUG 40s. And number 5, 30,000 of the SEP 13 puts. Yesterday, a pretty hot day, 1.17 million contracts on the tape. The big dog yesterday, similar size to today, 65,000 of the August 20 puts this time. Followed by number 2, 59,000 of the AUG 17 puts. Could have been a bit of a put roll because the 20 puts were opening, 17 puts not so much. Number 3, 58,000 of the AUG 18 puts, the whole put strip here. Listen, number 4, 41,000 of the SEP 19 puts. And rounding out the top 5 yesterday, 41,000 of the October 28s. Also opening there, listeners. Wednesday, the big dog of the week, 1.83 million, even though just barely, listeners. The big dog on Wednesday, 143,000 of the AUG 25s, followed by 131,000 of the AUG 45s. Again, our 1x5 friend, like taking it off maybe 1-to-1. Number 3, 98,000 of the August. One more time, of the October 50s. The OC 50s, listeners, those are all opening as well. 98,000 of the OC 50s out there. Interesting strike selection. Number 4, 69,000 of the SEP 15s, and number 5, 55,000 of the OC 19 puts. Speaking of the OC 50s and those kind of fun strikes, we have been talking for a while. I know our buddy Mr. Matt from Rhoads, whenever he's on the network, has been talking about the garbage, the junk calls, the AUG 60s, doubles, that kind of stuff. I know a few of you have been nibbling on those, and some of you wrote in over this past weekend, similar to the UVIX trade. You had a great weekend out there, so it's worth noting some of those in your back pocket for a rainy day. Again, you don't need to get anywhere near 50 to have those bad boys turn in a 2x, 3x, 5x, maybe more on some of these strikes. So interesting stuff out there. Tuesday, 1.38 million, the big dog on Tuesday, 68,000 of the SEP 45s, followed by number 2, 35,000 of the OC 15 puts, number 3, 35,000 as well of the SEP 17s puts, number 4, 35,000 of the October 18 puts, 35,000 was the number du jour on Tuesday, and number 5, 34,000 of the August 80s. 8 O's. My goodness, and those do not appear to have been opening. Let me look here really quickly and see. They printed for a dime, 8 cents, 12 cents, and then the largest block was for 14 cents, listener. So you like those from anywhere from 8 to 14 cents? AUG 80s, wow. That certainly qualifies as a junk call. And then Monday, the big dog right behind Wednesday, just a rounding error away. We're at 1.83 million for Wednesday, 1.81 million for Monday. Obviously, things were spiraling out of control on Monday. We talked about the VIX cash print before the open. We talked about the futures, talked about people panicking and closing things out. The big dog on Monday, 92, almost 93,000 of the August 16 puts. So a lot of people may be getting on that train to get on some of that good, juicy turnaround in vol. 16 may be a bit of a bridge too far. We shall see. 83,000 of the SEP 14 puts, so number 2. 66,000 of the SEP 20s, so number 3. 60,000 as well of the AUG 40s. And number 5, rounding out our top 5 for the week, 58,000 of the August 50s. Mr. Meatball, it was obviously a pretty wild week on the VIX front. I mean, we're pushing pretty much 1 million plus contracts a day. So there's a lot of paper out there, but anything of particular note catch your eye this week, sir?
Just the general volume. It was every day was busy. I was surprised we didn't see a lot of people stepping in to try and buy a bunch of cheap puts to try and fade this. I think people got caught. I think the fact that the VIX really failed to rally until Friday is what drove a lot of the volume this week, because people were pretty flat-footed in terms of whether they were hedged or not, and that was the big driver of kind of everything. Finally starting to see a little bit of fade action today. I don't hate this. Somebody out there buying the 15 puts for 20 cents for regular September. Those are cheap and could happen. So I don't hate that trade.
Mr. Rhoads, same question for you. Obviously, you looked at the weekly VIX options. Anything on the big boy VIX options catching your eye this week?
No trades that I really got excited about in the big boy, as you put it, in the big boy options this week. I kind of wish I talked to, or not you, Mark, the other Mark, sent me a text about an option trade that using November and October, and I liked that idea. I didn't see it as a trade, but I like that idea an awful lot. So that's probably the best thing I saw in the standard VIX options was a Mark Sebastian idea.
There you go. Stay tuned for more on Wednesday with the big.
Hey, go me and my smart
go
ideas.
you. Oh, I liked that. I like the idea behind. What did you say? Buying an October 25 put and buying a November
20 call.
20 call. Yeah.
And then hedge it with, and then Yeah. So do that, and then for every 2 or 3, you buy like one cheapy VIX 30-40 call spread in August, just to hedge in case things blow up in the next week.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So
that's a trade I like a lot.
There you go, listeners. More nuggets for you as we keep on rolling. Let's go out. We touched on SVIX already, so you don't need to belabor it. It was at 24 3/4 when we kicked off the show, down about 7 1/3 points from where it was a week ago. Getting some of that back now, back up to about 25.5 right now. 13,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV is 17,000. That's up 6,000 over the week. So SVIX getting a little bit of its mojo back, at least from a volume perspective. UVIX was at a 780 when we kicked off the show. Puts it down about 2.4 points as we're coming into the latter portion of the show. It's at about a 730. That puts down another half a point, so down nearly 3 points right now, down 2.9 on the week. And UVIX also starting to put up some decent numbers out there. The ADV is 29,000, and so far today we are at about 19,000. That 29,000 ADV is up 7,000 over the course of the past week. By the way, if you're wondering what are the size positions in both of these, the big dog and SVIX right now are the AUG 25 puts. That's interesting. Puts taking the top spot, about 3,000 of those. And then in UVIX, it is the AUG 9 calls, 5,800 of those out there. So, Mr. Rhoads, we kind of talked UVIX and SVIX already. Anything else catching your eye out there in either the two twins, sir?
Mute button. From the twins, I'll be doing what I do in UVIX and buying that sucker later today before I leave this floor, and have my fingers crossed that maybe bad things happen again, but they don't last. That's the best case scenario, isn't it? That we come in on Monday and VIX spikes up every week, and I make tons of money off my UVIX, and then make it back off of SVIX over the course of the week.
That is kind of the best case scenario.
I think I'm retiring. I think I found the key.
You found the magic key. There you go, Liz. I like it.
There you go.
And the next time I see you, sir, Gibson stakes are on you.
Absolutely.
So. All right. Mr. Meatball, anything else on the twins for you this week, sir? I'll take that as
we can call them the Us Twins, UNS. I like that.
Yes.
Coming up with all kinds of funny things.
The Us Twins. Yes, there we go. So nothing on UVIX or SVIX, Mr. Meatball. Nothing else?
I mean, like I said, I'm ramping up for SVIX on
Wednesday night,
on Wednesday.
Baby.
And UVIX, when I'm a little disappointed they didn't reverse split it before this pop, because then it would be really, really fun.
What a monster. What a monster that would have been. VXX is probably regretting reverse splitting. They didn't need to.
Oh, I'm loving it.
The market would have done it for them. But yeah, can you imagine UVIX if it had been at like a 25 plus handle right before all this madness? Oh my goodness. What a beast. I think we all somewhat regretted it when it got up to 40. We said, what have we unleashed upon the world? So yeah, would have been interesting at the very least. UVXY was at a 35 when we kicked off the show, listeners, down 4 points from a week ago, continuing to come in as we're doing the show, 33.40 now, so giving up another 1.6 points since the start of the show. So they're coming for vol right now. 167 is the volume. That's well north of their ADV, which is already skyrocketing up to 110,000 contracts a day. That's up 23,000 from this time a week ago. So intriguing stuff out there. UVXY has got a lot of vestigial positions in his top stuff, so I won't break down the top positions unless you're really jazzed about the pre-split Jan 25s out there. And we mentioned splits. VXX already did their reverse split. Maybe they're thinking they didn't have to because the market certainly delivered some more upside for them. They were at a 60 even when we kicked off the show. That puts them down 2 points from this time a week ago. As the show has progressed, they are down to a 58.60 right now as well. So down another 1.4 points. So down 3.4 points on the week. But again, a 60 handle in VXX. You don't see that too often. 25,000 contracts on the tape this week. The ADV moving in the right direction. 48,000 contracts. That's up 5,000 from this time a week ago. Let's look really quickly if any. I'm guessing a bunch of puts out here today. Yeah, the top trades today, listeners, in VXX. Oh, no, it's the 61 calls expiring today. Interesting. I did not have that on my bingo card. It's like paper might have sold them. They got some off for 42 cents. So if that's the case, more power to you. They were trading like 18 cents now a few minutes ago, or 11 cents. So if you got to sell those, more power to you. But intriguing stuff. I know, Mr. Rhoads, you have taken a not excited, not enthused view, I think, to put it mildly, on VXX. But Mr. Meatball, you sounded a little bit more, shall we say, intrigued by it now that it's hanging out at around a 60. What's catching your eye out there in VXX, sir?
I mean, the same levers that make me go long SVIX are the ones that obviously would make me want to short VXX. With it this high, the ability for that thing to decay back down to $10, there's a lot of opportunity.
That there is. I think we were talking on the show last week after that big VIX pop. One of the big prints we saw in VXX was D's 40 puts. Someone loading up on those for size. So someone backing up the truck for a little bit of VXX erosion. Are you back on VXX? I know I said in the past, listeners, that I kind of washed my hands of it. But, hanging out at a 60, I'm not trading it, but I'll at least pay attention to it a little more. Maybe if I find some intriguing nuggets, perhaps it's worth a nibble as we keep on rolling, listeners, into a little bit of the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crystal ball. Spoiler alert, none of us had had a 37 handle in the VIX futures, or of course the ridiculous 60 odd in VIX cash. Let's see, as we're coming towards the end of the show here, if my system wants to play ball with me, 21:31. So actually the Rock Lobster, given all the madness that has unfolded over the course of the past week, actually decently impressive. Not within our 1/10 of a point margin of victory, but he's within 3/10 of a point pretty much. He was at a 21 even. So no joy for him, but not bad. Mr. Rhoads was at a 23.60. Again, given the range we had this week, we kissed all of these. And then I was at a little bit more juice at 26.5. So if we had done the show, let's say a day ago, I would have been all right. But not today, listeners. So a rough one, no winner. But the closest was the Rock Lobsters. That means, Mr. Meatball, you get the choice. You want to go first? Or you want to pick somebody else?
I'll go first.
All right, what do you got?
Let's see. We're 21-29 right now. What did I guess last week, Mark?
It was Andrew, and he guessed a 21 even.
Oh, that's pretty darn close. Good for Andrew.
Indeed.
My guess is that we're going to see a little bit more of this play out, but we'll have calmed down. So I'm going to go with the super palindrome, Mark. Are you ready for this?
Are you going 1991?
22.
Oh.
22.
22. A good one, listeners. A lot of twos. Get your two action in here for your palindromic VIX guess for the week. Looks like Mr. Rhoads was next closest. So, Mr. Rhoads, what are you feeling for this time next week?
Get to guess in the middle. I'm usually at the end, having blown it. Kind of messes with me a little bit. I think we're going to start to see some break in the clouds. People aren't going to be as upset. I'm going with 1967.
An excellent year. Is it a good VIX prediction, listeners? I guess we will find out. I was toying with a 19 handle in the old brain pan as you folks were talking out there. I might keep it just a little bit north of the 20 handle, just for fun, as the kids say. So I'm going to go 2028. That is your VIX market for next week, listeners. Mr. Meatball at the upper boundary, 22.22. Mr. Rhoads at the 1967, a rare low print for Dr. VIX, and myself, the Goldilocks in the middle at 20.28. All right, that is going to do it for us on Vol Views this week. My voice managed to survive, listeners. Of course, I'm not done yet. No rest for the wicked. If you're hanging out in the pro, I will be back in a little bit to hold court for some unusual activity for options oddities. So check that out if you're not over there on the pro. I think I got one more show in me, then my voice is done. So I got to struggle through one more ahead of me, listeners. And Mr. Rhoads, in the meantime, sir, if they want to check out all of your analysis, you're talking about the carry trade unwind, all this research you're doing. Folks want to check it out. Where should they go? What should they do?
Just follow me on Twitter. My full name at Russell Rhoads. I forgot to tweet a little bit while we were talking today, so I'm too much going on around me. Tour groups walking by, people keep saying hi to me. I apologize for excitement. Somebody almost scored a goal in the Olympics. Sorry, that's all it was.
I thought it was I thought there was a trade going up.
Yeah, Twitter's the place to find me. I've also got a Substack, and it's just my full name at .substack.com.
That's bringing back old trading floor memories. Nothing happens, and then something goes on in a sporting event on TV, and the crowd gets excited. There you go. That sounds about right. Check him out on Twitter, listeners, at Russell Rhoads. The whole formal name all spelled out like you heard it there. And Mr. Meatball, the clock is ticking. Folks want to get access to the big SVIX strategy unveiling. Where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at OptionPit. We'll put the information out there.
At Option Pit is the place to go to get access to that. It's going to do it for us on the on-demand side. I want to thank all of you who joined us on the podcast front this week. If you missed anything, it's all waiting for you there on whatever device you're listening to this to on, which is, of course, there are many. There are a legion now. I'm going to rest my voice for a little bit back again for oddities on the pro side. Then we're all off for the weekend. Go out, have fun. Keep your powder dry out. These are still crazy times, so just bear that in mind. Back again on Monday for the option block all the way through to next Friday, another episode of Volatility Views. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.